Hi, people, and welcome again to this wonderful and informative edition and episode of Breaking Out of Depression. To help us deal with some of the challenges that we are facing in this community, and I'm sure that so many people are facing in the world, including families, friends, co workers, loved ones, and people that we somehow find ourselves associating with on a social basis. This is the place that we love for you to be at this time so you can get the information that is necessary to help you make informed and positive decisions about how you can deal with all areas and aspects of mental illness. So, welcome again to this version or episode of Breaking Out of Depression. Our guest is Dr. Fred Moss, like to be known as the On Doctor, and he'll tell you why in a moment. He is a mental health advocate, psychiatrist serving in many capacities, a keynote speaker, psychiatry expert witness, podcaster, mental health coach, and teacher, a man of many talents. He says it is his desire to help people to be real and heard has been the driving force leading him to multiple settings and roles as a psychiatrist over the years and compelling him to continue to look for better, more effective ways to provide the highest quality care to align people with their most authentic self to deliver into an eagerly awaiting world. So, without further ado, let's introduce our special guest, Dr. Fred Moss. Welcome.
Great to be here, Andy. Thanks for having me. It's really wonderful.
It's wonderful to have you with us on this episode, on this podcast as well. So, I'd like to hear from you before we get into the meat of things or into the heart of the matter, as they say. Who is Dr. Fred Ross? Not the expert, not the psychiatrist, not the one who hosts the podcast or the expert witness. As a man, as an individual, as a human being, how would you describe yourself?
Yeah, Dr. Fred Moss is I'm a man. I'm someone who's lived a life. I'd say I've lived a life and a half, really. I maybe even two and a half lives. I've been around. I was born into a family that was really eager to have me bring joy and love to a family that was in chaos and disarray at the time. I had two older brothers, and they were probably already fighting pretty hard with my parents, and they were 10 and 14 years older than me. And really, I'm the one who is able to bring communication and love and peace into any area that I come into. Now, I don't always succeed. It's not always what I'm capable. I don't always, don't always accomplish that goal. But generally, my space is to help people actually optimize their capacity to be their real self. And the best way to do that, the best way that I have found to do that is through conversation, is through communication, is through human connection. And ultimately, that is the finest medicine that's ever been created. It's way finer than any medicine that's ever been created in any, psychopharmacological laboratory anywhere, certainly. And it's way finer than anything that I have ever heard for bringing instant healing and instant love into a group of people, into a particular person who is feeling imbalanced or unsteadied or unsettled or uncomfortable or miserable or in some ways experiencing life in a way that they feel stuck or that there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
What we all want more than anything is to be heard for who we are.
Yeah, I get that. And thank you for sharing. So, when you use the term on doctor,
Yeah.
mental illness, what does it mean in detail? And what is the idea or the philosophy behind it?
Right. So the term undoctor is it's a moniker that was affectionately given to me by a friend a few years ago because he heard me speak. And he really said, Fred, I got the perfect name for you, undoctor. And I decided to take it on. Basically, I've been a doctor. I'm actually an MD. I graduated medical school at Northwestern University in 1988. And I've been a doctor for over 35 years. And I've been in the psychiatric field the whole time. And I was actually in the psychiatric field for 9 years, even before I graduated. So, the idea is I've learned how to be a doctor for sure. I came through and I went into psychiatry because I disliked psychiatry, actually. I didn't like it when I first went in. I went in because I hated the direction that it was going, and I thought that I could bring communication and connection into the field. I was a mental health worker. I was a child care worker at the time, working with adolescent boys in a state mental health facility. And I had already learned that connecting with these kids who were only like 6 or 7 years younger than me was what brought healing, not only for them, for me, for everyone. Whenever there's connection, whenever there's a harmonic resonance, we all heal in that setting. So what ended up happening is that I got spat out after my residency and after my child and adolescent fellowship into a world that was really now very focused on psychiatry being of the diagnosticians, the ones who make the diagnosis, and more so the ones who prescribe medicine, which was actually the last thing that I wanted to do. But there I was, typecast, and I was asked to be a doctor. And when people see a psychiatrist, nowadays, if I ask people what's the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist, they almost always have the same answer, which is the psychiatrist prescribes medicine. Well, it isn't really what I wanted to do, but I did it anyways because that's what it was asking me. It caused a lot of soul sacrifice. A lot of heartache took place over those first 15 years. Then in 2006, I decided that I had enough of that. I no longer, I took an oath that was supposed to be an important oath for me. It said, first, do no harm. And in that oath, I wasn't sure that I wasn't doing harm by prescribing medicine. And so I decided to do something different, which seemed radical at the time. And that was in 2006, where I began to actually take my low-risk patients off of medicine entirely. I had 2,000 patients in my office, and I decided to take them off. I mean, it can't be that bad, right? I mean, it's not like we question putting them on it. We give people toxins, we don't question it. We take people off toxins, we do question it. It's very weird. And so I did that, and sure enough, people got way better, reliably way better. In many cases, they lost their diagnosis altogether. So when that happened, I really learned that these medications and maybe the diagnosis themselves were perpetuating the symptoms they're marketed to treat. They're actually inducing or sometimes even causing the symptoms it's marketed to treat. And I wanted to scream this from the mountaintops and tell everybody, hey, we got something here that's really important. When I take people off medicine, they get better. But I couldn't really do that. I felt violent at the time, and it's hard to hear somebody who feels violent. So I had to soothe this down over the several years and find a way to communicate this effectively and believably, because that's what people really deserve. Everyone wants to be heard, including me, and everyone wants to learn, including you and everyone. And so the object is to communicate effectively so that what I say can land over there the way it's meant to land. And right. That's true with all of us, right? So over the next several years, I closed down my practice because I took most of my people off of medicine, and my practice was no longer very worthwhile because they left. They were better, and they didn't have to see me anymore. And that, I worked myself out of a job. It was fantastic. And I began to travel around the United States and do traveling doctor stuff. And I worked in many different states, in Indiana and Kentucky and Michigan and Illinois and Ohio and California. And everywhere I went, there was the same problem. It was very common that I work in an inpatient unit, and they'd just be medicating the daylights out of the patients. Or I'd work in a 3/4 house, and or a clinic or somewhere, and they just would be medicating and diagnosing people left and right and counting on me to do the same. So I had several different jobs as I went through, and then decided that I couldn't do that. Now, I've actually quit medicine on a number of occasions because I could no longer live with myself diagnosing people and medicating people, which is all I was being asked to do. So eventually I became a transformational coach, just like you, a transformational restorative coach, taking people off of medicine and actually realizing a really important feature is that the medicines were not causing the problem. How could medicines, they're just an inert substance after all. They're just a thing. I mean, things don't cause problems. It's like blaming rat poison. It's not, you don't blame the rat poison. You use rat poison to kill rats. And same kind of thing. The medicine isn't the problem. What the problem was, and I looked at this very closely, is that people want to know that there's something wrong with them. And they want confirmation that there's something wrong with them. If they're feeling depressed, like you have the show here all about depression, if people feel depressed, they feel like something's wrong with them. Maybe there's nothing wrong with you if you're depressed. Maybe that's the proper answer to a world that's out of control. Maybe it's okay that you're depressed. As Krishnamurti said, there is no sign of mental health to be well adjusted to a sick society. There's no sign of that. If you have a life that's depressing, or you're looking at things that are depressing, there might be nothing wrong with you. It might be the proper answer, the proper response to what's going on in your world. And, it's people who think that there's something wrong with them that actually start the cascade. You go to a doctor, like, doctor, what's wrong with me? And the doctor is then forced to diagnose you with a condition that confirms that there's something wrong with you. In this case, it might be depression. Yes, there's something wrong with you, and I have something to treat you. It's called a pill, and I'm going to give you Prozac or Zoloft or Paxil or Wellbutrin, whatever it is that, Effexor or Remeron or Cymbalta or whatever it is, antidepressant they give, and you take it, and it makes you worse.
Yeah.
Okay. It actually makes you worse. It actually makes your depression worse, or it gives you so-called side effects, some sort of effect that's very uncomfortable, and you don't get better. Now, Andy, before we go too far, because I'm sure you have listeners who are like this, there are some people out there, many people, who feel like they have found their diagnosis. They're very happy with their diagnosis. They're happy with their therapist. They're happy with their doctor. They're happy with their treatment. They're happy with their medicine. They wouldn't change it for the world. It's exactly what they want. This is the top of their world. They never would change it. They're not going to trade it in. You know what? More power to them. Please keep doing what you're doing. If you have found something that works in your life like that, please keep doing it. Don't argue with me. Keep doing what you're doing. It's great. Congratulations. This conversation is for the hundreds of millions of people who don't meet that criteria, because there are hundreds of millions of people who feel like they're underdiagnosed, overdiagnosed, misdiagnosed, undertreated, overtreated, mismedicated, whatever they are. And those are the people I'm speaking with. Those are the people who know that what I'm saying actually holds water. So that now that disclaimer's in place, let's talk a little bit about what happened next. I decided to move into the coaching field, away from the psychiatric field, so that I wouldn't have to diagnose people and medicate them. I could actually live with my fellow travelers like you, or my clients like them. And we would just talk face to face like two humans who needed connection. And inside of that connection, healing would take place, because I have been taught how to listen. I have been taught how to hear. I understand how the system works. And I've learned over time. I've had like 40,000 people call me their doctor in all those years. Lots and lots and lots and lots of people all over the world. And I've actually done psychiatry work in different countries, in Nepal, in Bhutan, in Thailand, in Israel, in France, in Italy, in England. I've been there. And I did that so that I could learn a little bit about what is this humanity thing? What's uniform across all of humanity? When I finally realized that coaching was where it was at, that this idea of connecting with another person along the same journey, that I too am only really somebody who's I'm a little bit wise. I'm an older kind of guy. I've been around the world. I've been with a lot of different situations. There's people who have counted on me many times. Like I said, I've lived 2.5 lives. I've been around, and people can count on me to really create a space for them to grow and develop. And that's what happens in my process. And I began to look at other ways to grow and develop people. That might be through gratitude or meditation or eating well or drinking a lot of water or journaling or sleep hygiene or going out in nature or creativity, art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening, all those things. That's in my book. That's in my Creative 8 book right there. We start talking and we start realizing there are ways to have people feel better, even when they're feeling unbalanced, that have nothing to do with a psychiatric diagnosis and certainly nothing to do with psychiatric medication. And began to do that, I began to realize, yeah, I am the undoctor, because as the undoctor, what I do is I undiagnose people. I remind people that maybe there's nothing wrong with them. Maybe they don't need medicine. Maybe it's okay to be uncomfortable in an uncomfortable world. I mean, after all, Buddha, he sat under the tree for a lot of days, right? And when he got up, he had resolved lots of things. But one thing he didn't resolve is that misery exists in this world. Mm-hmm. It's real. It's very real. We all face it every single day. Let's face it. It's okay to be miserable because it's part of that human condition called being alive. When we really acknowledge that together, that person over there who's feeling ultra sad probably has a source of that sadness that really just needs to be connected to. And by undiagnosing people, I take away their urge to think that there's something wrong with them. Because if there's nothing wrong with them, they won't go seeking help to get fixed. And if they don't go seeking help, come to a doctor to get fixed, and they won't have to get started on some medication. And if they don't get started on medication, which actually will give them something that's wrong with them, if they start taking medicine, they truly get a chemical imbalance. It's really funny, Andy. Here's a piece.
Wow.
So here's a piece that make you laugh. If you look at psychiatry, it's one of the only subspecialties, if not the only one, that when a patient comes in to get evaluated and you tell them they're okay, they get pissed. That's not true in any other medical field. If you go to an oncologist or a cardiologist or an orthopedist or a proctologist or a gynecologist and they tell you you're okay, you're like, cool. But in the psychiatric world, when you tell someone they're okay, they get furious. They're like, you don't even know what you're talking about. I'm going to go next door and get me a diagnosis. Because people need to be confirmed that there's something wrong with them for all the stuff we do. Have you made any mistakes yet today, Andy? Because I know I have. I have made some mistakes today already. If I could blame those mistakes on a condition and not have to take responsibility for it, I'm going to do that. And that's what a psychiatric experience and diagnosis often does. It's like, oh yeah, that wasn't me. That was my ADHD. That wasn't me. That was my depression. That was my bipolar disorder. That was my psychosis. That was my autistic spectrum. That was my narcissism. Blah, 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 blah. Because people give up the responsibility for the things in their life they're not proud of when they get a psychiatric diagnosis. So as the undoctor, what do? I undiagnose and then I unmedicate. And by doing that, I can take people off of medicine. If you haven't been on medicine for very long and you're only on a handful of medicine, it becomes harder and harder the longer you're on and the more medicines you're on to take people off, because people get really dependent on it. They really think they need it. And every pill they take in the morning confirms that there's something wrong with them. And it gets pretty embedded and pretty cemented. And some people I can't really help.
Wow.
But for the people who have just started or are thinking about starting, I could definitely help those people look at other ways to stabilize and optimize their life. So we undiagnose, we unmedicate, and ultimately we undoctrinate, taking people out of the system altogether so that they don't have to come into the conventional psychiatric system and get this kind of diagnosis or label or stigma and this kind of treatment or therapy or intervention or these kinds of toxic medications, which actually do cause or induce or increase or perpetuate the symptoms they're marketed to treat. So the undoctor, undiagnose, unmedicate, undoctrinate.
Wow. So I've got a comment. I'm going to put it there across the stream. Blessed evening, guys. A lot of information. Loretta Packett.
Yeah.
I'm hearing so much unconventional stuff coming out of what you're saying. And I'm thinking that at sometimes you mentioned the fact that when you go to a psychiatrist and they tell you that you're okay, people are upset.
Yeah.
Because that can be true as opposed to other medical professions.
Yeah.
And I also understand the part where you're speaking about when you begin a medication or a course of medication, it alters the chemical balance that your body naturally has. And so things then can become to go down the hill or get worse. How is it then that we find the right kind of mindset, Dr. Fred, to tell us, hey, maybe, just maybe, it is not a condition we have.
Exactly.
It is a mental process that needs to change. We need to develop new neural pathways, and there are ways in which we can do that so that our thinking changes, and then the results that we see, which we are supposed to hold responsibility for in our lives, changes as well. How does your method help people to come to that conclusion?
Yeah, great question. I love it. And thanks for listening so well. It really shows me you were listening very well. So look, you're going to be depressed. It's going to happen. You're going to be miserable. You may be hopeless. It could happen today. It's okay. It isn't like I need to change all that. What I need to do is have people get that that's going to come and go during the day. That is simply part of the smorgasbord of what it means to be human. You're going to be confused. You're going to be scattered. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be afraid, maybe even terrified. You're going to be uncomfortable, maybe really deeply uncomfortable, unspeakably uncomfortable. You're going to have trauma. You're going to have interactions where you hurt people. You're going to be hurt by others. You're going to be heartbroken. You're going to be, you're going to be out of balance here and there during the day. It's sort of like the weather. It just sort of happens. But we don't have to attach to any of them. And that's where mindfulness and meditation can be very helpful. When we meditate, when we are mindful, when we're show gratitude, when we're connected to a spirit, a higher power, when we're actually doing creativity, when we're watching what we eat and watching what we drink and watching who we hang around with, watching what we do online and in the community, watching what we say and what we hear. When we start doing that and really rehabbing and cleaning ourselves, and we start opening up to what's really so in this life, which is it goes all the way from 0 to 100. It's all the way from super terrible, because there's plenty of super terrible stuff going on in the world, to super incredible. Like last night, I don't know if you saw it from where you were, but the moon was unbelievably beautiful last night. And the aurora borealis was out. The northern lights were out right here in Grass Valley. We were able to see the northern lights from our front porch. Incredible. And that is some serious beauty. The mountains are right here. The nature provides us beauty after beauty, rivers and oceans and mountains and, forests. So many beautiful things. There are animals, dogs and cats. And, we saw a couple deer on our late night walk last night. They were absolutely gorgeous, right? And even bears and snakes and, lizards. And it's like there's so much beauty in the world too. And if we can really get the mindset that all of this is called humanity, that's where Welcome to Humanity actually shows up. That's the name of my brand. And that's my point, is let's embrace it all. And let's try not to forget that we don't have to become that depression. We don't have to become that terror. It's okay to be terrorized. Look, I'm not saying I'm looking forward to the next time I'm terrorized. I'm not. I hate being terrorized. I really do not like being terrified or terrorized.
Yeah.
It's not a pleasant experience, highly unpleasant. But is that part of life? Well, in this life, it sure is.
Okay.
And so that's part of really just getting the whole shebang that's called being a human in this crazy life.
Wow. I get what you're saying, and it is so important for folks to recognize how powerful the lens that we choose to see the world in, how much that makes a difference in our lives, our perspective, our sense of opinion of the things that we see, and how we assimilate things and how we assess things. It's so intricately important to the final decisions that we make in our lives.
Yeah.
So John Campbell says pharmaceuticals really tend to get people physically dependent and then mentally dependent. Wow. Yeah. He's been listening to Dr. Fred. Yeah. So here's the question. Seeing then that someone could become dependent based on the intake of medicine over a certain period of time, you said that if they are about to go on medicine or they have been taking it for a short period of time, it's easier to get them off,
for sure,
rather than someone who's been in it for a little while.
Yeah.
How difficult is that change that you're speaking about after someone has been doing it, let's say for a year, 2 years, and their whole system now has been reprogrammed internally to depend on that medication or that course of medication? What are the challenges that they would have if they should decide, hey, I'm going to follow Dr. Fred Moss's solutions, ideas, and try and get off the dependency of this medication?
All right. So it's all,
it's
all in the language. It's in the language. When you say try and to use the word try, there is no try. Yodo says that, there's no try. And there's no like dependency either. I mean, the truth is, here's the real thing. Every single morning or every evening or whatever time of the day that these people are taking medicine, every time they take it, they are confirming that there's something wrong with them inside of their system.
Right.
There's something wrong with me. How do I know? Because I take medicine for it. That's how I know. And what they don't necessarily know is that when they're taking medicine, they are creating something that is wrong with them. So the horse in the cart often gets flipped.
Yeah.
really happens here isn't that it's like, you know, we all worry about like, you know, the movie with Ray Charles where he goes through his, you know, he goes through his withdrawal. Actually forgot the name of the movie, but it's a fantastic movie. And I forgot somehow. I should have the name, but I forgot. And we think that the withdrawal is going to be at that level, that the withdrawal is going to be more painful than taking the medicine. But ultimately, what the people who are coming to me already realize these medicines aren't working. They want the difference. If you are taking medicine and you think it's working, then I'm not going to be very much service to you. I'm not going to be able to take you off medicine that you think is good for you. You're going to have to actually know that it's not doing what you thought it was doing. Now, once that's the case, we can start looking at this thing called mindset. We can start really looking, you know, what if I'm right? What if the medicines are actually creating the imbalance that you're experiencing? Now it starts becoming a little bit more attractive to consider stopping the medicine. You don't have to do it. In many cases, you don't even have to do it slow. You don't have to taper. You don't have to do it. You don't have to go from 1 milligram to 3/4 milligram to 1/2 milligram to 1/4 milligram to 1/8 milligram. You don't have to do that. In most cases, you can actually stop the medicine. Now, you should do it with me around because I know what happens when you stop medicine, or you should do it with some professional who knows how to stop medicine. But I don't think people realize that doctors are not taught in medical school or residency how to stop medicine. We're not taught that. All we're taught is how to increase, add, or change medicine. Because if medicine worked, then we keep you on it. And if medicine doesn't work, then there's something wrong with you, and we're going to add or change or increase your medicine. But we don't really have an incentive to take you off of medicine because we expect as soon as we take you off of medicine that we're going to, you know, kick down the house of cards. But we don't really get that really what's happening, if in fact what I'm saying has any truth to it, that the medicines are actually causing the symptoms they're marketed to treat, then we start having this conversation. Do you get that, Andy? Let's say it was me and you. Let's say you had come to me already and we began this conversation in our first session. You would already have some hope. Like, you know what? What if he's right? What if a week or two after I stop taking medicine, I don't feel any physiological symptoms anymore and my diagnosis goes away? The original diagnosis that I thought I had goes away. Like I don't even have it anymore. These are not even Band-Aids, Andy. Some people say they're like, oh yeah, it's just a Band-Aid. No, it's not a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid with a razor blade embedded in it. That's what it is. And it actually, you put a Band-Aid on a cut, right? And your cut gets a little bit better for a moment. But if it has a razor blade in it, shortly thereafterwards, the blood will start seeping out the side of the Band-Aid. And in the psychiatric world, when that happens, you think your cut got worse. And your cut did get worse, but it was the Band-Aid that caused it to get worse. So when you start looking at, I wish it was a Band-Aid. If it was a Band-Aid, I wouldn't be having this conversation. If all it was just covering stuff up and that was, you know, what it did, that'd be fine. That'd be neutral. I'd be okay with that. It wouldn't be terrible. The fact that it's actually making stuff worse, that's what makes me nauseous, Andy. That's what hurts me. That's what breaks my heart.
Wow. So we have another comment by John Campbell. He says, perception alters our receptions. It's how we see things.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to play a video for you, Dr. Fred, and we're going to get some commentary on it after. So here we go.
The bottom line is that in the life energy circle is mental health. And so many people suffer with anxiety, depression, addiction, PTSD. And really, my take on mental health is that all of us have suffered trauma, right? There's none of us that came through unscathed. All of us have suffered trauma. We all live in reaction to that trauma, right? And then we basically have created stories around how we're living that out. And those stories then become our identity. And so now we're actually tied to something that is familiar, but it's not really functional. And what I've discovered in life is that the hardest thing for people to deal with is actually ambiguity, which is the unknown.
Yeah.
So Jeffrey and I have both been on each other's show already. So I know Jeffrey pretty well.
Wow.
Yeah.
What exactly should we learn from what that message just came across to us said? What exactly should we get from it?
Yeah, you know, like mental illness is variable. And again, ambiguity, the unknown, is where we find our discomfort. And in that discomfort, we sometimes translate it to a traumatic experience of feeling anxious and depressed. And when we feel anxious and depressed, we think there's something wrong with us. When we think there's something wrong with us, we come to Jeff, or we come to me. We come to MDs looking for help. Jeff is a cardiologist. He's not even a psychiatrist. He does that kind of work from the cardiology standpoint. So his view of mental illness, which you can see a great interview I've had with him over on the Healthy Healer as well, and I've been on his podcast. The whole idea is that mental health, is a variable that is subject to a mindset shift. And when we shift our mindset, we get a whole different view of what the experience was that was causing the discomfort in the first place.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing and for clearing that up, Dr. Fred. So this is what I want to get now for our people to really hear. How do we find the correct atmosphere to have the kind of conversation and that kind of symbiotic connection that it creates the opportunity for healing?
Yeah, these are difficult times, but I get it. This is the most difficult times we've ever lived in. But you know what you have to understand? I get reminded of this every so often. It's always 100% of the time been the most difficult time yet.
No matter what time it is.
No matter what time it's ever been, it's always been the most difficult time that has ever existed.
All right.
So we're still always on. It just gets a little bit more difficult. It's the most difficult time, and then it gets more difficult. It gets more difficult, more challenging. So in these present times, how do we find the right? It seems like it's become more and more challenging to set aside our fear of saying who we really are, of authentically speaking our true self. Again, we got to hear that, Find Your True Voice book, the other book I wrote. And we start really looking at what's in the way of speaking our truest voice. What's in the way of our authentic self? What's in the way of rediscovering what's at the center of who we really are, and then speaking that truth? I ask this question when I do my keynotes and I do my, speaking engagements. And usually it comes up with one word. And I know you asked me not to say any swear words and to be, keep it clean. So this is a 4-letter word starting with F. It's called fear. That's the word. Okay. Yeah. And we are afraid to speak our true selves. We're afraid that we're going to cause trouble, that we'll be dismissed, that they will be disregarded, that we'll be hurt, that we'll be no longer belong, that we'll be thrown off the island. Now, we learned a long time ago how to pretend to be someone that we're not in order to protect the person that we are. We learned that a long time ago, and the crack in the cement has gotten larger and larger over time. So now people don't speak when they know that they should. They've got things to say and they don't say it. And even more like ludicrous and more preposterous and more absurd than that, people have reached a point where they're actually saying things that even they don't believe. Not even in a lie form. I'm not even saying lying. They're lying to themselves. They're actually saying things that they believe that they don't even believe. Wow. In order to stay on the same team. This is a crazy thing, and it's so hard to turn this stuff around. How do we do it? We start really looking. That's what Find Your True Voice is about. And it's what my True Voice course is about as well, which uses podcasting. Both my book and my course use podcasting as the template. This is a great place to learn how to speak as a guest, as a host, as a listener. You can really learn a lot about how to speak in the podcasting world. It's a unique field where we still own the material and we're unlikely to get censored or canceled in this setting. Whereas on social media, it's not so easy. And certainly in public, it's a little bit harder. So we start really looking at, can we get in touch with what's at the real center? Can we bear down and get to what's really so for us? Can we find that? And the answer is definitely yes. We take small incremental steps and get in touch with those things that we know are true that we haven't said to people. I ask people, go out in your inner circle and say something today that you haven't said to somebody that's in your inner circle who you care about. Tell them that you love them, or tell them that you don't like that dress, or tell them that you stole $5 from them 20 years ago, whatever you want to tell them. But say something new, say something real, say something honest, say something genuine, say something authentic. And what we're about to learn when you do that is that it's way more powerful to be authentic than to simply be an agreement. We sometimes think that the way to be with another person is simply to agree with them. Just agree with them. It doesn't cause fights. Well, that's nonsense. It's not true at all. When you agree with somebody, you're actually, and you're not really in agreement. When you say you agree with somebody and you're not really in agreement, there's a massive misalignment there. And that misalignment can cause real troubles. Andy, have you ever noticed that there's somebody, you might be talking to somebody, there's some divisive issues in the world. Have you noticed that? There's some things out there that, where there's like different sides on this very important topic. So whether it's a virus or whether it's your politics or whether it's global warming or whatever it is in a war, who you appreciate on which side of a war or anything, racism, child trafficking, whatever it is. If someone says something from the other side, but they say it from their authentic heart, they really actually believe what they're saying, even if you know that they're in your world, they're dead wrong, you can actually hang with them. There's something respectable about that authenticity that has you being able to see that that person is truly in touch with what's important to them, even if in their full disagreement. But if someone says some things that agree with you and it's not coming from a core values place, that's like an inauthentic agreement, you snort at that. You're not happy with that. You can feel that energy. That does not work. Another thing that authenticity does is it opens up the space for the other people who are near you to be authentic themselves as well. I trust that that's what's happening today between me and you. We are being as authentic we are, taking very boldly and courageously an important topic or two and digging down, to drilling down to what's there. Turtles all the way down, they say. And because of that, we create a space for other people to see what authenticity looks like and then maybe step into their own authentic self as a result.
Yeah, that's so true. True talk. Lying to ourselves. We do that a lot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but true. I want to look at some of the stuff that you have done in terms of your accomplishment. And one thing that really stands out to me is that you have written many articles for Psychology Today. And in 2019, you won an award for Best Essay at the Conference for Global Transformation titled Global Madness: What Must Happen to Unite? Tell us a bit about that.
That's a great article. I'm really proud of it. If I told you how it was written, it would make you laugh. I might as well tell you now. My wife and I were in, she wasn't my wife yet. We were in a spat, and I just went into my bedroom and took out a napkin and a pen and started writing. I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And that's what the article that eventually became Global Madness was written from there. Now, Global Madness is a cool article that starts off looking at the homeless, the indigent population, looking really at that group that I kind of envy at times. And here's what I mean by that. We don't like to think that we would rather be homeless. I don't think I'd rather be homeless. I'm not saying that. It's difficult on the streets. There's a lot of stuff. There's no monitoring of good behavior. So it's hard to be on the streets. But one thing about being on the streets that might be a way to look at it is that they get to speak their truest self. They actually get to be what it is that is really so for them, because you can't fall up. I mean, there's nowhere to fall. This is what you're going to do. Be more homeless? I mean, that's what you're going to do. Be more poor and have more moneyless. So there's something about the freedom that comes from being able to speak their truest self. And I really get when I'm around the homeless, if I'm near a camp or something, that I might be more in prison than them. I am so worried about my wallet or about my keys or about my tie or my sport jacket or my car. I'm so worried that stuff's going to be affected by these people over there. And in the same way, I think that I have a clue about what reality is. It is possible, of course, that their reality is very valid, that person over there who is seeing the world as being as messed up as it is actually pointing to a truth. The world is messed up, dude. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It is messed up. It's not like you should give up. You should keep being a great person. Keep bringing love and peace and understanding and all that. Go ahead. You know, what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? I think that was Elvis Costello who once said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know what? There's nothing. You got to keep doing it. You know, walk on, wake up, be strong, be bold, be protective, be secure. You know, take care of your friends, take care of your family. Like, do the right things. That's fine. But if you're going to tell me the world isn't messed up, I'm going to tell you you're wrong. And the homeless people really get a handle on that. So the start of the article really talks about that. And then it starts really taking a look at what would it really take for us to unite as humanity. And what I really started to notice was that we create a lot of us and thems, whether they're racial us and them, or socioeconomic us and them, or national us and them, or sexual us and them. There's a lot of us and them. We have an us, we call it us, and then around the boundaries of us is a them. Like, we're all us until the point that we become them, and then we're no longer us anymore. Like, there's this weird definition that happens on the borders of what us is. What would it take to make that us 7.8 billion people deep? What would that take for the whole world to call us an us? Because that would really change the world. And the best that I could come up with was if we knew together that there was a calamity that was occurring where the entire earth was at stake. And if we did not work together, the earth would dissolve or disintegrate or blow up or explode or whatever. Would it be enough to get us all to stand together and work, even if we had been fighting wars with each other or hurting each other up until that point? Could we turn it around? So the article points to the possibility of like a Martian invasion. And if there would be a Martian invasion and we knew they were coming and it was 60 days and we had to stop everything we were doing and work hard to actually use the strengths of everybody to put our minds together, I believe that humanity has every single tool necessary to thwart a Martian invasion. But it would take the whole planet to do it, and we'd have to work together. The Russians would have to work with the Ukrainians. The Palestinians would have to work with the Israelis. The black people would have to work with the white people. The gay people would have to work with the straight people. The Americans would have to work with the Russians, with the Chinese. You know, all of that would have to happen. But is there such thing as a big enough threat to cause that to happen? As I explored this in this paper, I presented it at the Conference for Global Transformation in 2019, and lo and behold, there were hundreds of papers presented. And at the end, it was over there in LA, and there was a lot of cool people there. It was where the Academy Awards are presented, and they called my name from the front of the stage, and I got to go up there and pretend like I was won an award because I just did, which was the best article for that particular 2019 section.
Okay, so I'm gonna put up another comment here. Homeless, and I suppose the better would be homelessness, has a way of being stress-free that we can learn about.
That's right. I like what you're saying, John. All of your comments. Thank you.
What's the key, Dr. Fred, to your beginning of the process of helping someone to see the need for the things that you just point out? I mean, it's amazing that we can sit and think about the fact that imagine Russia and America working together for a global cause. Wow, how amazing would that be?
Right.
But does that possibility exist?
I don't know. It would have to be a big one. Global warming's not big enough. War's not big enough. Racism
Exactly.
is not big enough.
So
Sex trafficking is not big enough.
What would make it big enough
Yeah.
for someone to say, hey, you know what? I don't think that we are so different after all. Because a perfect example is COVID-19.
Yeah.
Everybody was on the same page.
I don't know. about
Everybody was vulnerable.
Yeah.
Everybody was a potential victim of COVID-19. And so we had to find a way together, all of humanity, to deal with this monstrosity as it came into our being, into our lives, and disrupted what we normally would call this our normal way of life. But what if we could do that in the absence of COVID-19?
hmm
How amazing would this world suddenly become?
Yeah, indeed. Exactly. And I'm not sure COVID-19 actually succeeded in putting us all together. In a lot of ways, it was very divisive and separating,
Yep.
of course.
Yep.
And
I agree.
Yeah, if there could be I think it's going to take something. It's going to take an outside threat to really get this done. And that's what the point was of the Martian invasion. But just imagining it and putting it into the conversation of what would it really be like to work directly and honestly, like taking into consideration the concerns of all relevant parties, including your adversaries. What would that really look like? And we can imagine that. And once we imagine it and speak it, maybe it has an opportunity of being manifest. How does it look? If we don't learn how to talk to the greatest threat in the world is not COVID. It's not global madness. It's not Ukraine and Russia. It's not Israel and Palestine. The greatest threat in the world is not sex trafficking. It's not racism. It's not any of that. The greatest threat in the world is that we're not speaking our true voice. Because all of those things, although every one of them can take down humanity single-handedly, they're all huge, super huge. I don't mean to discount any of them. They are massive. But every single one of them is going to require open and honest conversation to get on the other side of. So if we don't start speaking our true voice, put a fork in us, dude. We're done.
Yeah. So I'm going to share a video here, Dr. Fred, and I entitled it Forgive.
It's hard to
Let's
give
take a
them
look.
credit. If someone's been, you or gaslighting you, manipulating you, painfully traumatizing you one way or another, emotionally, physically, etc., it is hard to forgive that person. You feel like forgiving that person is actually in some ways like supporting what they did, like in some ways it's sanctioning what they did, and in fact it isn't that at all. When you forgive, you take away the rent space in your head that's being utilized when you stay in resentment. So being resentful, being like vindictive and creating guilt and blame is an inside job, and the idea is that you can theoretically forgive.
Wow. This is what we are speaking about.
Exactly.
How powerful is that in the healing process?
This idea of forgiveness is so critical. And it's not simple because we really think that forgiving somebody is giving them license to continue doing the stuff that they're doing. And it's somehow we're agreeing with them if we forgive them. It's not. It's not at all agreeing with them. It's totally different. The object is like when I'm angry with you, or when I'm resentful of you, or when I'm, upset with you, and have a grudge with you, you're not even feeling any of that. I own all of that when I'm upset with you. It owns a little space in my head that could otherwise be used for other circumstances, other tools. And so if I am willing to forgive, what I'm really doing is releasing that space that's within me that I'm claiming has to do with you. But the truth is, it doesn't have to do with you. I can forgive you and open up that space. Now, there's another type of forgiveness that I didn't speak about. Thanks for finding that clip, by the way. I remember that. And that is the forgiveness for myself. I'm a jerk, but so are you. And I don't mean that, in any kind of personal way.
Yeah.
We're just jerks. As humans, we are jerks. We make jerky moves many different times, often several times per day. When I can forgive myself for being the human that I am, for making the mistakes, for inadvertently or even sometimes intentionally hurting another person, for saying the wrong thing or being insulting, for actually not listening when someone's counting on me, or not protecting someone when someone is relying on me. When I get that I'm a jerk, I need to forgive myself as well. Now, can I forgive myself for my inadequacy? Can I forgive myself for my shortcomings? This is a very important piece of what it means to be a beautiful human. So not only do I get to forgive you, which is an inside job, but I obviously have to forgive me, which is, of course, an inside job, since both sides have to do with me. And when I forgive, that opens up the stage for me to, again, be able to connect. And in that connection, what do I get to create? Harmonic resonance. And what happens with that harmonic resonance? We get to create healing. And what happens with that healing? That's the source of all love. That's the whole point, dude. That's exactly why we're here. Exactly.
Right. So I'm going to read another piece as you speak about that. And it says, your most recent work is centered around the healing of the healers,
Hmm.
aptly named Healing the Healer. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, Healing the Healer is actually a course that I created. It's out there at healingthehealer.online. And
Hmm.
you can get that course. It's basically talking about many people who went into the healing fields. In this particular case, they went into the healing fields. They decided they wanted to help people. So they became a social worker, became a nurse, became an acupuncturist, or became a doctor, became whatever they became. And then once they get released from the schooling, like what happened to me, they get spat out. And now the job doesn't look anything like what they thought they were going to get themselves into.
Yeah.
So they're hurt, they're traumatized, they're in pain. They have to do all their time writing or driving or lying or doing something, whatever they didn't want to do. Those healers, they went into the field for the good reason. They went through their training and they came out injured. They came out fractured. They came out disintegrated. This group needs healing. And generally, what happens to that group is they go through another metamorphosis. They go through a time where, if pressed, they don't look, you cannot get wealthy doing something that you hate.
Hmm.
It's not even possible, because you'll only do it till a point, and then it will be a big enough incentive to do it, because you'll get over the hump. Maybe you needed money, or maybe you needed, something to do with your life. But as soon as that's over with, you can't keep doing something you hate, because there's no, and when looking at the cost benefit, there's no benefit anymore. So you can't get really wealthy in a big way. And I don't mean just with money, I mean with life. It's doing something that you hate. So what Healing the Healer does is walk people, especially healers, people who have gone into the healing field, to find what really matters to them, and then be able to explore how to be a healer in that field, and how to take advantage of the constructs of the game. What is really here? What's being really asked of you if you're going to be a healer? If you're going to be a healer, can you communicate effectively with other people? Can you really be there with another person? And ultimately, I really don't think there's any other place, like the source of all healing. I know you know where I'm going with this, is human connection. That's just where it is.
So very important. And the comments just keep coming in. We can't change others, but we can change ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. So, Dr. Fred, I'm going to give you the opportunity, with a little help from us, to tell people how they can get some of your work, access to your coaching, and the informative experiences that you have shared with us, some very valuable information. I'm going to give you a little help there. Which one is the most effective for people to make contact with you?
Well, I think the first one is probably the most effective, although there's another one that isn't on there, and that's drfred360.com. So
Okay.
that's the best place. That's where you really can, that's where all of these links exist, and you can see my PDFs, and there's some freebies there. There's some, there's some lead magnets there, and there you can see where my courses go, and you can get access to my podcast. That's a pretty cool place, is drfred360.com. But of all of these, my main website is welcometohumanity.net. And if you're real, if you're serious, the LinkedIn site is a little bit of a cool place as well. I like my LinkedIn site. I like LinkedIn. Of all the social media, that's the only social media that I actually believe is legitimate. And so I like hanging out in LinkedIn, but I probably hang out in Facebook more often. And I don't like Facebook, but there I am. I mean, I just like everybody else that got that big F, and I hit it on my phone every day to go check what's going on there. I have some Facebook groups out there, and I have some good friends there. But ultimately, if you really want serious business taking on, mental concerns, the best place for me to do that in a true legitimate business fashion is in LinkedIn, and then my website, welcometohumanity.net, and drfred360.com.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. So I'm going to leave it up there a bit. We can look at two other important things before
Yeah.
we bring this episode to an end. And the first one I want to look at is the advantage and or disadvantages of the AI era that
Hmm.
we are all currently grappling with now. What is your take
Yeah.
on it as pertains to the use or not using it in your particular explanation of your system and the methods that you use to help the people that you
Yeah.
deal
Yeah. So I spent all morning in an AI conference. It was ended 1 minute before this podcast. So I've been here all morning doing AI. And I have another program that I've developed called AImeetsMentalHealth.com. And you can go there, and we've had 2 webinars already, and we're really looking for people who are super interested in this. And I'll tell you, I think I'm concerned about the future of AI in mental health, because I think we're going to start leaning on AI, which is only going to use the past material to diagnose people. And it's going to do that same thing where it's going to design diagnoses using so-called evidence-based material, the past as the past has developed, and like going to tell people that they're schizophrenic, or tell people that they're bipolar, or tell people that they're ADHD, or tell people that they're narcissistic, or they're autistic, or their anxiety disorder, or their depression, or whatever they think they have. And when it does that, it's also going to tell them what treatments work, but it's going to use the model of regular conventional medicine psychiatry. As you already hear very clearly, I'm not very aligned with that being the form of treatment or even the form of diagnosis that helps humanity. There are 4 interfaces that are important when you're looking at AI and mental health. There's the positive interface that AI has on mental health. There's the negative interface that AI has on mental health. And then there's the positive aspects of mental health that have it on AI, and the negative aspects of our mental health that actually create AI. So AI is a massive tool like nothing we have ever seen before. ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and all, Beautiful, and all these things that are out there. Gemini and so many, they come around every day. There's more new ones coming out. It's so massive, and it is considered, to be even smarter, which it kind of is, way smarter and way faster than any human has ever been in the history of the world. Okay, so we can get access to all these things so quickly in the form of writing or speaking or slides or videos. We can do all that. So it needs to be respected as a massive power, but it certainly has the tools to be incredibly destructive as well. And it has the tools to be incredibly constructive. So if we use this thing properly and we make sure not to lose whatever it is that we call our humanity when dealing with it, otherwise we really risk being run out of town by AI. Like the necessity for humans becomes less and less obvious. Once AI can produce its own AI, so that humans are no longer in the mix anymore, what's to stop AI from deciding that humanity, like I have heard somebody say, if you ask AI in a little bit, like if you ask AI, how do we get rid of global warming? The obvious answer is to get rid of human beings. And as soon as you say, that's the right answer. That's just being honest about it all.
Yeah.
And then you say, can you do that? And their answer would be, yeah, we can do that. And then they just proceed to do that. That's a really cold science fiction way to look at the world. But let's be honest, it's a wild time of life. And how we deal with artificial intelligence and what's coming around the corner, this quantum level intelligence, it's, oh my God.
Yeah.
Or with Neuralinks, the stuff that Elon's got going on with Neuralinks and what we're really doing here, or everlasting life, or all the stuff that could happen. It is wild, dude. It is wild out here. And, what do I have to say about it? Who cares what I have to say about it on the one hand? On the other hand, whatever it means to be human, and I'm not even positive what that is. Maybe it's a matter of really getting an overarching overview of the whole thing. The past, the present, the future, the fact that there is no truth, there is no reality. There's no known reality. We just believe what we believe, and if someone else believes it with us, then we think we're right. That's the whole mental illness thing. They believe what they believe, and they can't find anyone to agree with them, so we think they're wrong. So that's when we get agreement reality, we get a new level of reality. And I think AI has a chance of upending all that we think. And we're going to start believing what the large language models say is reality, when it has its flaws because it's been actually injected only by human intelligence. And so human intelligence is very limited. And even though we think AI is unlimited, of course it's limited because it has to speak directly to us.
Wow. So we're about to wrap up. And on closing, I just wanted to touch a bit on us being able to find our true voice.
Yeah.
I believe that is one element that is critical to us living a better quality of life. And I feel, Dr. Fred, that many people lack the ability to speak to their true voice because what is on the inside is not truth, but something that substitutes for truth. And it's a sad reality, but it is what it is. Speak a little bit to that as we close off this episode.
Yeah. So again, that's my book. I put up the wrong hand there. So that's my book right there. It's called Find Your True Voice. And the course I have is called the True Voice Course. TrueVoiceCourse.com is another place that's really cool. And both of those courses really help us find our true voice. Now, the truth is we have a true voice, and we don't have to look out there for our true voice. We just got to look inside deeper. We got to move the things out of the way that are in the way of us actually rediscovering that which we're here for. I am a firm believer that we actually have access to what it is that matters to us. We've had it our whole life. It's the same stuff that was there when you were 2 years old and 3 years old and 5 years old. You know, back when I was in the playpen, I used to watch my brothers talking to my parents. And I know it was important to me: communication, love, joy, bringing peace, like actually being funny and being available and being present and, you know, being a contribution. It's very important to me. Now I get to be a little bit older, you know, now I'm an elder already. And somehow that, I don't know how the heck that happened, by the way, but here I am. And I'm actually counted on to be wise. I'm counted on to take the life that I've had and incorporate it and to make some kind of sense out of it and then to deliver that to people who are listening. If you're going to speak your true voice, you're going to have to first get that you're not speaking your true voice. You're going to have to come to grips with the idea that you're full of it. You're going to have to come to grips that you have been compromising what you're saying based on the groups that you're in. Now, that's not true for every one of you. Like Mr. Campbell, he might think that he's actually saying his true voice. He's doing really good today, by the way. And, you know, I don't know. We all learned as a child how to say what the teacher wanted us to say rather than what we thought was important. So it was then what we decided to be someone different than we are in order to protect the person that in order to be something different than we are in order to protect the person that we really are. And then over time, that has increased. When we actually speak our true voice, you know, Henry David Thoreau, he's like, the massive men go through life in quiet desperation and go to their grave with their songs still in them. I don't know. Is there something more tragic than that in the whole world? You actually get through this whole life and nobody gets to know you? Whoa. What a sad state of affairs that actually happened. And it happens all the time. So what can we do? We take those incremental steps. We speak to the people who we love, who are caring for us, who we care for, the people who are important to us. And we start saying some of those new things. We start designing and uncovering our authentic self. We start being a little bit more genuine. How do we know that? Because we no longer have to remember what we said. You just say what's on your mind right now. You don't have to remember, because when you lie or you tell a mistruth or you're misaligned, you actually have to remember what you said so that you don't like bust back on yourself, you know? So we all know what that's like. It's just very uncomfortable. Once you start speaking your truth, there's no longer stuttering. You don't stammer. You're actually just speaking what's so for you at that very moment. It's flowing. You know, it just flows through you, and there's a truth here. And you could start actually having those kind of communications. Is it risky? Yes, it's risky. I'm going to take this moment to tell you a joke that my daughter told me 2 days ago. It doesn't quite fit in here, but it's pretty funny, and I think you'll appreciate it a lot. So, and then we'll come back to the seriousness, but let's put a minute of levity here. 2 thieves walk into a liquor store. They walk in together, they get to the liquor counter, and they're, ready to rob the liquor store, right? So one of the thieves says to the other, "Hey, is this whiskey?" And the other one says, "Yeah, it's whiskey, but it's not more whiskey than robbing a bank."
All right, I get it. I get it. I get it. Yeah.
So in the riskiness, is it risky to speak our true voice? It is. But here's the thing, it doesn't work to not speak your true voice.
Yeah.
You're still going to be disregarded. You're still going to be dismissed. You're still going to be thrown off the island. It just won't be you. It'll be the person you pretended to be, but it's still going to be you because you were foolish enough to pretend to be somebody that you're not. When we get access, that there is nothing more important than speaking our truest self and listening to people radically for what it is that they have to say and creating that connection, that's when we become humans for the first time. That's what finding our true voice is all about.
Yep. Exactly. And that is an amazing summarization to what we've been speaking about for the past hour and 5 minutes or so. There's another side to what Dr. Fred is speaking about, and it reminds me of the story of Alexander the Great, who at the age of 32 died after he had virtually conquered the existing world at that time. And the saddest thing about his reality is that the quote that remained most famous about Alexander's position on life when he died was the one that said this: "A tomb now suffices for him whom the world was not sufficient." So imagine he conquered the entire world as it existed at that time, but that still wasn't enough for him to be a fulfilled human being. And he spoke his truth. Sadly, it was the truth that took him to his demise when he died. And that's the reality of what we have. We have to decide what our truth is going to be like. And that voice that we speak with represents the resonance of our truth. And if we are honest about it, at the end of the day, that is what makes the difference. Not us trying to be the imposter and developing that imposter syndrome attitude that wants to please the Joneses and everybody else. But at the end of the day, when we get back into our private nooks and our crannies, we cannot even come to terms with the man in the mirror because we have been living, speaking, and telling untruths that please everyone else except ourselves. So we thank Dr. Fred Moss for being this informative and engaging guest. And we also thank the comments from John Campbell and Loretta Packett. As we end, we just want to remind you that you need to do all that you can within your capability and your ability to continue to break out of depression. So until next time, bye, folks. Take care.
Thank
Godspeed.
you.
God bless. Okay. 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 We're going to end the stream here now.